Thank you, Langdon managed, his hands trembling around the precious gift. The guard hesitated in the hall. Mr. Langdon, may I ask you something? Of course. My fellow guards and I are curious. Those last few minutes. What happened up there in the helicopter? Langdon felt a rush of anxiety. He knew this moment was coming, the moment of truth. He and Victoria had talked about it last night as they stole away from St. Peter's Square. And they had made their decision. Even before the Pope's note. Victoria's father had dreamed his antimatter discovery would bring about a spiritual awakening. Last night's events were no doubt not what he had intended, but the undeniable fact remained. At this moment, around the world, people were considering God in ways they never had before. How long the magic would last, Langdon and Victoria had no idea, but they knew they could never shatter the wonderment with scandal and doubt. The Lord works in strange ways, Langdon told himself, wondering wryly if maybe, just maybe, yesterday had been God's will after all. Mr. Langdon? Chartrand repeated. I was asking about the helicopter? Langdon gave a sad smile. Yes, I know. He felt the words flow not from his mind but from his heart. Perhaps it was the shock of the fall. But my memory. It seems. It's all a blur. Chartrand slumped. You remember nothing? Langdon sighed. I fear it will remain a mystery forever. When Robert Langdon returned to the bedroom, the vision awaiting him stopped him in his tracks. Victoria stood on the balcony, her back to the railing, her eyes gazing deeply at him. She looked like a heavenly apparition. A radiant silhouette with the moon behind her. She could have been a Roman goddess, enshrouded in her white terrycloth robe, the drawstring cinched tight, accentuating her slender curves. Behind her, a pale mist hung like a halo over Bernini's Triton fountain. Langdon felt wildly drawn to her. More than to any woman in his life. Quietly, he laid the Illuminati diamond and the Pope's letter on his bedside table. There would be time to explain all of that later. He went to her on the balcony. Victoria looked happy to see him. You're awake, she said, in a coy whisper. Finally. Langdon smiled. Long day. She ran a hand through her luxuriant hair, the neck of her robe falling open slightly. And now? I suppose you want your reward. The comment took Langdon off guard. I'm sorry? We're adults, Robert. You can admit it. You feel a longing. I see it in your eyes. A deep, carnal hunger. She smiled. I feel it too. And that craving is about to be satisfied. It is? He felt emboldened and took a step toward her. Completely. She held up a room service menu. I ordered everything they've got. The feast was sumptuous. They dined together by moonlight. Sitting on their balcony. Savoring frisée, truffles, and risotto. They sipped dolcetto wine and talked late into the night. Langdon did not need to be a symbologist to read the signs Vittoria was sending him. During dessert of boysenberry cream with savoiardi and steaming romcaf, Vittoria pressed her bare legs against his beneath the table and fixed him with a sultry stare. She seemed to be willing him to set down his fork and carry her off in his arms. But Langdon did nothing. He remained the perfect gentleman. Two can play at this game, he thought, hiding a roguish smile. When all the food was eaten, Langdon retired to the edge of his bed where he sat alone, turning the Illuminati diamond over and over in his hands, making repeated comments about the miracle of its symmetry. Vittoria stared at him, her confusion growing to an obvious frustration. You find that ambigram terribly interesting, don't you? She demanded. Langdon nodded. Mesmerizing. Would you say it's the most interesting thing in this room? Langdon scratched his head, making a show of pondering it. Well, there is one thing that interests me more. She smiled and took a step toward him. That being? How you disprove that Einstein theory using tuna fish. Vittoria threw up her hands. Dio mio.